the thing that was so shocking was just how loud some of the bugs were. Welcome, my name is Stephanie, and this is basically my little travel diary where I'm sharing my experience being on the road, working, and exploring for a year. So today is day 49, and we are still in Krabi, Thailand. We're finally doing something that I have been wanting to do, and that is going on a hike. Yes, I know, not like what everyone thinks is the most exciting thing of all time, and certainly not top of the list of things to do in Krabi, but I love to hike, I like to backpack too, and I haven't done a lot of that in the past few years. Why, might you ask? Well, my husband Bran does not like hiking at all. Not a big cardio guy in general, and so hiking is not top of his list of activities that he wants to do. But today I convinced him that we should go because it's one of the things on our activities list that we just haven't tried yet, and I want to at least get one hike in before we leave. We got this hike recommendation from someone that actually lives in the area. So I think out of all the options that are kind of close to us, this is probably the best one. The trail is called Nong Nok Nature Trail, or that's my understanding of what it's called. It's also labeled Dragon's Crest. So it seems like the name of the trail is Khao Nong Nak Hat Noparat Dara National Park. I'm sure I said that completely wrong. I looked up the location on Google and there's some information there, and it says that it should take about an hour each way up and back. It looks like it'll be a cool hike, but it won't be a super long hike. So this seems perfect, like fairly short and sweet. And there are some comments that say it's steep, but I don't know, like I've hiked a lot of places, you know, I've hiked in Yosemite out of the valley several times. We rock climb, like, I don't know, I kind of have a feeling it might not be quite as bad as it says on there. I'm hoping it'll be like, you know, difficult enough that we get a good workout and we can kind of get back here and have like a proper afternoon. It's time to get going because we absolutely need to get there at 8 a.m. when the place opens so we can get there, enjoy the hike, and not get too sweaty. So let's do it. So much for that hike being only a couple of hours. Well, so we just finished our hike and we are really sweaty. But this was fun, even though I don't think Bran would say it was fun, but I had fun.
It was okay.
It actually ended up being a pretty challenging hike. Like I've talked about in another video, there really is something about Krabi that motivates me to do outside physical activities in the suffering heat. This was definitely one of those experiences, but man, I do think it was totally worth it. It was a challenging hike. Parts of it were super steep. It was very like stair-steppy in places. There were some actual stairs, some of which seemed a little bit sketch, and there was a lot of sand, so it felt a little treacherous at times. When you're mostly going uphill, usually that is the most difficult and challenging part of the hike. And don't get me wrong, it totally was challenging, but coming back down was actually just as difficult for us because the fact that you're kind of scrambling a little bit in places, it's very steep and kind of sandy and like lots of roots and trees to kind of get around. The real main challenge was truly the heat. Like we were shaded almost the entire time, and it really wasn't too bad. It was mostly an overcast day. We got out early and it wasn't super hot at first. We were feeling pretty good, but man, over time, it just got so hot. I don't know if I've ever sweat this much in my life. It was quite gross. We were just chugging water. We brought a ton of water. We went through a lot of it. We thankfully did bring like more than enough, so I'm glad we maybe overpack the water a little bit. It was a lot. All of that doesn't really matter though, because I still had a really good time. I would highly recommend this hike. I thought it was fun. I thought it was a little challenging. I do think it's longer than maybe Google says or what people have written on Google. We were maybe not the fastest people hiking that day, but we weren't the slowest either. And I think it took us almost 2 hours to get up there. It definitely took us almost 4 for the entire thing, including the time that we spent at the top, which I do like to hang out, take pictures, really appreciate the view, you know. I think it took us about 4 hours, which is probably embarrassing. Perhaps we just should have been a lot faster. I was so confident it was going to be chill. It was going to be like a nice little hike and it wasn't going to take like all day. And it didn't take all day, but it took like 2 hours longer than we thought it would, which totally worth it. And I will tell you why I really loved it. The nature was super cool. The trees were super interesting. There were all these vines everywhere. There were flowers. There were just cool, crazy plants. And it was loud. Brandon and I were both really surprised by how loud it was as we were hiking through. We could hear bugs, monkeys, birds, all of those things going at once a lot of the time. And the thing that was so shocking was just how loud some of the bugs were. I'm used to cicadas back home, like that's not an unusual sound, of course. It felt like cicada sounds, but like really turned up high. And then some other bug, we didn't even know what it was, but I swear it sounded like someone was like using a buzzsaw nearby. It was so loud and piercing and kind of almost felt like there was like an alarm. That was really surprising, just how loud the insects were in the jungle. It felt very alive, you know, it felt like there were a lot of creatures in there for sure. And the other thing that was super fun, we kept spotting really cool little mushrooms, different plants I'd never seen before, some of them that just seemed huge, like way bigger than I thought something like that would grow. And we saw there were all these vines, really cool trees. Obviously, we saw little things like lizards and birds, but I think the coolest thing we saw was an actual turtle. There was a turtle just on the trail, which I didn't even know there were turtles in this area, but that was super neat. And the last part is, you know, the view. The view was great. And we've obviously been taking in some of these views, especially at places like the cafe we visited before, and just as we've been driving around in general, taking in the view at the top was great. And having a little bit of wind to cool us off also certainly was helpful. Now, I don't think Bran would agree necessarily, but there is something about like the sufferfest you might go through to get to a good view. You have to really work for it, you know? And then you get up to the top and it's so beautiful and you feel proud of yourself for like pushing through the pain. And I do really like that. I love that feeling. I think it's a very classic outdoor person type of thing to experience. It was hard and I definitely feel out of shape. My entire experience in Krabi has really just been, you know, stay humble. You think you're strong, you think you're fit. No, you're not ready for what Krabi has to offer you, or at least offer me. So that has been my experience, but I am certainly not mad about it. All of the outdoor nature stuff has been well worth it and fun. And I would certainly do it again. I really enjoyed this hike. I would definitely recommend it. The park in general had some other hikes and other trails. It could be fun to explore some of those other areas as well. One thing to note if you are considering it, and I read this in a few comments, you know, if you're someone who struggles with a lot of uphill, you have knee injuries to worry about, or you're concerned with taking a fall of some sort, this is probably not the best hike in the world for you. Like, we're pretty comfortable climbing and the downhill was hard for us. And I think the other thing to recommend is just make sure you're bringing enough water. I would definitely recommend bringing maybe more than you think because we went through it so much faster than we expected. Maybe bring some bug spray also. In general, the hike itself wasn't too crowded. For the most part, it felt like we did the entire hike on our own. We could occasionally maybe hear someone else a little bit ways behind us, but we weren't like tripping over other people too much, and the trail didn't feel too crowded, which was nice. I highly recommend doing it if you're in Krabi. If you're someone that's into hiking, just know that it might be a little more challenging than you think, especially if you're overconfident like me. It's definitely made me want to incorporate more hiking into the rest of our trip. I do really miss it, and I have learned that I can convince Brand to go even though he doesn't like it. So hopefully more hikes from me in the future and more hikes to share with you. If you have any good hikes to recommend for me in Thailand or honestly anywhere around the world, please let me know. I'd love to hear them. And as always, thank you so much for listening and hanging out with me. I will check in with you tomorrow. Goodbye.